has the increase of poppy production in Afghanistan severely decreased the price of the opium that makes its way to America?
Good question. Yeah. Afghan poppy has flooded the heroin market, and so the price of heroin is incredibly low. It's lower in most cases even than meth. And crack, I mean, heroin has just pushed crack out of business because it's so incredibly cheap. Now, a terrible side effect of this is, as crazy as this might sound, until the late 1970s, Afghanistan was a net food exporter. They actually grew enough food to export to Iran and to Pakistan. And now they have to import virtually all of their food. They don't produce any rice anymore. All those tomatoes and strawberries, everything that you see in the market when you're in Kabul, for example, it all comes from Pakistan because everybody's growing heroin poppy.
Mm-hmm. So did you spend very little time in Afghanistan? Most of it was in Pakistan?
In the CIA, almost all my time in that region was in Pakistan. I was only in Afghanistan for brief periods.
Mm-hmm. So, again, did you have any life lessons or wisdom learned from the Pakistani experience? The people the friends you made, so to speak, the acquaintances you made.
Yeah, I hate to say it; it's going to sound grim, but don't trust anybody. My closest contact, the guy that I was in touch with day in and day out, the one who had a going away party for me at his house where his wife cooked a dinner and baked a cake, he ended up flipping and joining Al-Qaeda. And when Al-Qaeda realized that he was Major Khalid, the guy who was working with the CIA, they beheaded him. And they videotaped his beheading, and now it's for sale in the souk in Peshawar.
What's the souk?
The souk is the market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess, but you kind of, wouldn't you expect that stuff to happen? I mean, why did you get into the CIA? Did you want to be James Bond when you were a kid? I mean, did you?
Yeah, I kind of did.
Yeah.
I did. Like, asking my parents for walkie-talkies when I was 9, and I would keep logs of what the neighbor kids were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved the whole idea of being a spy.
So you were a little bit of a busybody then? You were watching the neighbors?
Yeah, I kind of was.
What were you worried about? Were you worried about what they were doing, or they're up to plots?
I don't even really remember. I remember accusing one of the neighbor kids of stealing my dad's tomatoes. So I did surveillance on the tomato patch, right? But yeah, all through my childhood, I wanted to be in the CIA. And then I kind of put it out of my head. And then when I was in graduate school, it's kind of a funny story. And this can't happen anymore because we have the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, which made this illegal. But there really was an old boy network. You couldn't just apply to the CIA. You had to be spotted and recruited. So I was taking a class at George Washington University called The Psychology of Leadership. Fascinating class on why foreign leaders do what they do. As an example, the Yalta Conference. Everybody knows the Yalta Conference at the end of the Second World War. Why was that conference held in Yalta? Roosevelt had to go all the way around the war. He had to go through North Africa to Iran and then up to Crimea and to Yalta. It took, more than 24 hours to do that. And the man was dying. He was sick. That's why it was in Yalta, because Stalin knew he was sick and he wanted to exhaust him. And so when Roosevelt finally arrived in Yalta, Churchill was already there, and Stalin insisted on the meetings beginning immediately. All Roosevelt wanted to do was to go to sleep, and so he gave up Poland just to be able to get to bed.
Yeah, smart guy.
So I'm taking this class, and the professor gave us an assignment to shadow our bosses for a week and write a psychological profile of our bosses. I was working as an intern at the time at the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, major labor union here on K Street in Washington, second largest union in America. And I was a little bit afraid of my boss. He was one of these old-time, tough guy, union organizers. He had had his back broken during a riot once, and, scabs had beaten him, and just a tough guy. So we were halfway through the week. It was Wednesday, and we got into an argument, and I called him a racist, which he was. He got so angry, he took a stance, and he put up his fists, and I remember recoiling, like, oh, now I've done it. And I was waiting for the blow to come, and he looks at me and he says, "My penis is bigger than yours." And I said, "What?" I said, "I quit. You're nuts, and I quit." And I walked out. I went back home. I wrote my paper.
That sounds like the unofficial slogan of Washington, D.C.
Basically, it is. Yeah, this was a learning experience for me. That's
the Washington Monument there.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. There you go. He was just reading the slogan. He's just speaking it.
So this was late 1988, early 1989. And I wrote that I told the story, and I said I believed that he was a sociopath with psychopathic and possibly violent tendencies. I get the paper back a week later, and I got an A. And the professor wrote in the margin, "Please see me." So I went to see him after class. "Come to my office." I go to his office, he shuts the door. He says, "Listen, I'm not really a professor here. I'm a CIA officer, undercover as a professor here. And I'm looking for people who might fit into the CIA's culture. Would you like to work for the CIA?" I said, "Why not?" I was getting married right after graduation. I didn't have a job lined up. I'd always wanted to work for the CIA anyway. And so 9 months later, I'm sitting at my desk at CIA headquarters.
So what was the tell? Was it that you were interested in sociopaths? Because I guess you got to deal with sociopaths in the CIA.
Everybody at the CIA is a sociopath.
Does that mean you were too, or what?
No, I'm glad you asked that. A CIA psychiatrist once told me that the CIA actively seeks to hire people who have what they call sociopathic tendencies, not sociopaths. Sociopaths have no conscience, and so they can just wantonly violate the law and not have any remorse. But those people are impossible to control because they don't respond to polygraphs, right? If you have no conscience, you don't feel guilty, so you don't respond with guilt on the polygraph exam. People who have sociopathic tendencies do have a conscience. They do express guilt. But in the name of the country and national security, they're happy to violate the law. I can't tell you how many houses I've broken into over the years to plant bugs or cameras or to steal documents or weapons or whatever. I've lost count.
In Pakistan?
In 25 different countries. But it's because my country needed me.
Did you ever run into like a weird dog or a parrot in the middle of a house?
No, you have all that stuff planned out in advance.
Where do you put the parrots?
The dog and make him go to sleep, and the parrot we never had any problems with parrots. I remember one bird once, but it didn't.
What'd you do to the bird?
We just let him go.
Is that classified? What'd you do to the bird?
No, we just ignored the bird.
You never want those birds to say,
no.
Jesus, Jesus, or something like that whenever you're walking through, right?
That's right.
So did you ever have like a Home Alone experience where you actually walked into a booby trap and fell on something and broke the glass or something?
Close.
What was it?
I was in a friendly country working with my counterparts from that country's intelligence service. And I was tasked with breaking into an apartment. So I went with what's called a locks and picks officer, who's an expert lock picker. And this woman whose apartment we were breaking into, the building, it was an 8-floor building, and each floor had 2 apartments side by side, and opposite the apartments was the elevator. We couldn't take the elevator because it made too much noise. So we walked up the flights of stairs, went to the 6th floor. Still remember. And my counterparts had done surveillance on the building, and they said, the target's apartment's on the left. On the right is a married couple. He's a lawyer. She's a school teacher. They're both at work. I said, great. So we go up there, and the locks and picks officer is working on the lock with his little tools. and I'm standing right behind him. And I hear a voice come from the next door apartment. It turned out the woman had just had a baby the day before. So she's home. She's not at work. And the husband's on paternity leave, so he's there with her too. And I hear her say, I think somebody's in the hall. And I told the guy, stop. And we're silent. And then the husband says, I don't hear anything. I told him, go. He starts doing it again. And she says, no, I'm pretty sure I hear something out there. I said, stop. This was in a foreign language that I happened to speak. So we're waiting. The husband says, I think you're imagining things. I told him, go. He starts going again. And then she says, I hear somebody out there. And she comes and opens the door. And just as she opens the door, I turn to block him so she can't see him. And she says, who are you? And I said, oh, hello. I'm sorry. I said, I think I must be lost. I'm looking for my aunt's apartment. And I gave her a name. And she said, there's nobody in this building by that name. And I said, oh, is this number, 1205 whatever street? And she says, no, this is 1207. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I must have the wrong building. And she gives me a funny look, but she closes the door. And I told him, go. And then we hear click, and the door opens, and we went in and did our thing. But we came that close to getting caught.
But you've never had like a booby trap, like a string that's on the ground that trips you over, or somebody knowing you're going to
No, thank goodness. Although in Afghanistan that happened frequently, Al-Qaeda would booby trap pretty much everything that they were forced to evacuate.
Like, did they have like Indiana Jones style traps with like little spikes come
No,
out? Nothing arcane like that.
A lot of tripwires.
Okay,
is what it was. Yeah, and they would do things like they would take. I have actually some photos on my phone. They took Christmas cards. And in the Christmas card, they would put a detonator. So detonator is relatively flat, right? It's like 2 quarters on top of each other. Or 3 quarters on top of each other. And then close the Christmas card. So you'd open up the Christmas card and it would blow your hands off.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, yeah, they booby-trapped a lot of stuff.
Wow. That sounds like something out of Looney Tunes. You open up a Christmas card and blow your hands off.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. So did you ever see any weird animals in your experiences? Strange, like at a...
Yeah. I must have seen 24 desert foxes once in one night in the Sinai Peninsula. I had never seen a desert fox before, and they only come out at night.
Were you out in the desert?
Yeah.
What were you doing, camping?
Deep. No. Camping. I'm going to camp up at the lodge.
You're
the
mischief,
5-star
huh?
lodge. Yeah, mischief.
So where... They just came out in the middle of the night?
They come out of their burrows in the middle of the night because it's cooler, and they hunt for, I don't know, mice, I guess. I don't know. Saw a giraffe once off in the distance.
Oh, I thought you said someone's living room, maybe. Some of those people you have to go after. They keep wild pets. I remember the stories of Haile Selassie. He'd have a whole train of baboons and lions and everything.
Baboons scream.
They do?
They scream. Yeah, that's why I have. And
where did you see baboons at?
No. I'm saying Haile Selassie's baboons.
Yeah.
Peacocks scream. We saw peacocks a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, both in Afghanistan and in Pakistan.
Wow.
Yeah, they're very. They don't like when people come around them, and so they just start shrieking. So they're good, like guard dogs.
Right. Did you ever have problems with dreams, like night terrors, because of the work you did?
I left Pakistan 17 years ago, and I still dream about it every single night.
Do you have a recurring dream?
Yeah, I do.
What is it?
It's mostly that Satan's after me, and he's chasing me from hovel to hovel.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a literal Satan?
Yeah, like with horns and spiky tail and everything.
What color does it? I mean, you see it visibly in the dream? Mm-hmm. And is it in a same location, a building or room?
Yeah, I'm running around Faisalabad, Pakistan, like trying to take cover from Satan. I know he's after me. I know he's nearby. And these places are all dumps, and they're all like one-room mud huts or made out of concrete block. And I'm like, I can't hide here. Satan's going to find me for sure.
So you never have dreams of like people you've met or weird, it's just this entity?
Yeah.
Do you believe in supernatural stuff, or is it because you were raised in Orthodox church?
Yeah, I believe in God and the devil.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you have this to this day, that dream?
Oh, yeah.
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 Any other time?
The Veterans Administration was developing a blood pressure medication. Starts with a P, but the name escapes me now. And so they were giving it to patients at the VA hospitals, and it didn't do anything at all to help their blood pressure. But it had an odd side effect of making them forget what they had dreamt the night before. And so now it's used for PTSD. It's quite effective.
Do you use that?
Every night.
You have PTSD?
Oh, still. After all these years.
From your experience in Pakistan?
Mm-hmm.
What was worse? Now, you went to prison, you told me. What was
a piece of cake.
Prison was?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So just the fear of being... You were like, in the undercover state kind of all the time.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So you'd be a better actor than most people in Hollywood then, really.
I like to think I would.
Because your life depended on you getting the lines right and the character.
And I'll tell you what,
so you're like a method actor like Daniel Day-Lewis or something.
I wish I had Daniel Day-Lewis's money.
Wait, but but you could probably perform better than him in some of those roles,
Maybe. I'll tell you, I was very, very concerned about my personal safety in Pakistan. Very concerned. And one day, I would leave. I stayed in a small 16-room guest house rather than at the Marriott, because what are they going to blow up first? They're going to blow up the Marriott. And what did they do? 4 weeks after I got there, they blew up the Marriott and killed 56 people. So I stayed in this little guest house where nobody would know and nobody would recognize me. And I would leave every day at a different time and take a different route to work, just for my own safety. One day, I leave, I'm driving to the embassy, and I see a guy on a motorcycle wearing a red helmet, and he's trying really hard to stay in my blind spot. Now, the reason I even paid any attention to this guy was that he had to be the only person in Pakistan wearing a motorcycle helmet. I don't even know where you'd buy a motorcycle helmet in Pakistan. So I'd slow down, he'd slow down. I speed up, he speeds up. I said, oh, this isn't good. So I made my way to the embassy, and when I got to the entrance to the diplomatic quarter, he broke off. I worked a long day, 12, 13, 14 hours. So it was nighttime by the time I left. And again, I took a different route home every night. Sure enough, there he is. He's on me again. Well, that's the definition of surveillance. It's multiple sightings at time and distance. So I've seen him in different places at different times and at different distances from both home and work. So I'm positive I'm under surveillance. The next morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I went outside, I looked around, I didn't see anybody on the street. We had these mirrors on, sticks, and I looked under the car. I don't see any bombs or anything. I get in the car, I start driving around again. He's on me, 5 o'clock in the morning. I get to the embassy. I waited until the security guy came to work, and I said, listen, I am under surveillance. I'm 100% sure. And I told him, 3 sightings over the course of 2 days. And he said, okay, well, we have to wait till the chief comes in. So we waited another hour or two till the chief came in, went and told him, explained everything, gave him all the details. And he said, okay. He goes, you know what you have to do? And I said, I know. So I signed out a 9mm. And all day long, I couldn't focus on work all day long because I'm thinking, I have to kill this guy this afternoon. And I really didn't want to. Because I had never killed anybody at the CIA. It just wasn't my thing. I was always doing other things, right? And the guys were kind of like, there were 7 guys who were working for me. They were, come on, don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's all going to be worth it. It's all for your own safety. We're going to have 2 other cars out there on you. Don't worry about anything. Midday, I went to a joint safe house that we were running with the Pakistani intelligence service. That's where we used to interrogate prisoners. And I finished my interrogation. I started walking out, and then I stopped, and I turned and I said, General Muhammad, are you following me? And he said, no, why? And I said, because I'm under surveillance. I'm positive I'm under surveillance. And if I see this guy one more time, I'm going to kill him. And I never saw him again. Later on, a penetration of a friendly service told me that they had been talking about me amongst themselves. And they said that nobody could be as nice as I am. That has to be fake, right? That I was just being that nice to them so that they would drop their guard because I must be spying on them. And so they put this guy on me just to see, what am I doing when I'm not with them. Well, I wasn't doing anything. I was doing my work. But I was going to kill their guy because he was a really bad surveillant.
Did you ever have to kill anybody?
No, never.
You've never in your life?
No, thank God.
No animals?
Never killed anybody. No animals. Never even ran over a squirrel.
Have you dodged a squirrel and almost lost your life in the process?
No, I dodged a deer and almost lost my life in the process.
Did you come eye to eye with a deer as you're swerving?
In training.
Oh, wow.
Totally
This
demolished
is here in
a
America?
brand spanking new car.
In America? So why didn't they fire you then? If you wouldn't take a deer's life, how
I
are
mean,
you going to...
You know how many cars we go through? Oh
No,
my
I'm
God.
talking about the fact that they saw that you wouldn't kill a deer. That's not going to be a good agent, right?
No, some guys, their job is to go out and kill people, and mine wasn't. Mine was to recruit people. Mine was to be the
They
nice
saw
guy,
you as
the
a
good
salesman,
cop.
as a cheerleader.
Yeah. So you could either let me take you to dinner and agree to be my paid agent, or that other guy back there who's not saying anything, he's going to shoot you in the head. You have a choice.
So you were the nice guy. You were the option A.
Always.
Did you ever encounter any good Samaritans that got you out of a bad spot in your career?
In the agency? No.
How about the people you meet overseas? Any good Samaritans in Pakistan?
Yeah. Not in Pakistan, but in other places.
Any story that comes to mind of someone coming out and going the extra mile or doing something that...
You know what? It's still classified, and I probably shouldn't say. But yeah, there were some really, really good-hearted people out there. Yes.
What do you think makes a good Samaritan, do those kind of things when they don't have to?
I asked that question of a psychologist, and he told me that good Samaritans, whistleblowers, people of that ilk, have an unusually clearly defined sense of right and wrong. And it's because they usually come from very tightly knit, church-going, synagogue-going, whatever, families. This is an interesting thing about the CIA. There is no ethics training. None. Zero. You either go into the CIA with your own personal moral code, or you don't have a moral code because it's not going to be taught to you. And so, for a lot of people, they're never really sure where that moral line is that they shouldn't cross. When I lecture at universities, I always ask the same question as an example of this. Let's say you're a CIA case officer and you've recruited a penetration of a foreign intelligence service. Or no, even better, of a foreign terrorist group, right? So this guy's the real deal. He's given you information that is allowing you to save American lives and disrupt attacks, and everything he's told you has been true. So you go to meet with him. You're somewhere in the Middle East somewhere. Let's say you're in Cairo or Amman or whatever. And he says to you, listen, I've given you everything you've wanted. Everything I've told you is true. Now you're going to do something for me. I want you to go get me a prostitute. And if you don't get me a prostitute, I'm not going to give you any more information. Do you get him the prostitute? Yes or no? What would you do?